Hi, we're going to talk about What Makes a Good King by Abby Fossett, Thalia Furman, Rachel Gurley, and Gina Rokisky. So in this PowerPoint, we're going to talk about our protagonist, Hamlet. Hamlet struggles to accept his divine right to become king. But throughout the play, Shakespeare cultivates qualities in him that refer to great kingly qualities of old. The first is integrity, then wisdom, clarity, and decisiveness. Through this PowerPoint, we're going to evaluate how Hamlet attributes each of these qualities and refer them to kings of old who have attributed these qualities as well. The first trait is integrity. At the very beginning of Act 1, Hamlet says, "I have sworn it," referring to promising to kill his uncle and avenge his father's death. At the very beginning, Shakespeare sets up a test to put Hamlet's integrity to trial. If he completes his word by Act 5, the reader can see that Hamlet is full of integrity because he makes a promise and sticks to it. Therefore, when he says, "Hear thou incestuous, murderous, damned Dane, drink off this potion," he has stuck to his word and can be attributed as a man of integrity. Moreover, Hamlet consults his conscience and does what he believes is morally right. Hamlet never makes an action outside of his morals. For example, whenever he wants to see if Claudius is guilty or not guilty, he says, "The play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of a king." He desires to see whether Claudius is guilty or not guilty before completing the action, because he does not want to kill an innocent person. That would be against his moral compass. On the other hand, when sending Rosencrantz and Guildenstern off to their death, he said, "They are not near my conscience," for their actions throughout the play had not been moral, and he was totally okay with sending them to their death. Lastly, he says to Horatio, "Is it not perfect conscience to quit him," referring to Claudius, "with this arm?" He is basically telling his friend, "Is it not perfectly all right to kill Claudius because he killed my father in an even more vengeful and murderous way?" So we can see that Hamlet, first of all, sticks to his word, and second of all, acts outside of his moral compass, which refers to him as a man of integrity. Probably the most famous integrous king is King David of biblical times. And because religion was very much associated with the Elizabethan era, a lot of the Shakespearean audience would know who King David was and would relate Hamlet's soliloquies to David's Psalms of Laments. Hamlet constantly remains transparent with himself in these soliloquies, and like King David, he is aware of what he is feeling and the pain around him. So in Act 2, when he says, "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave I am," we can compare this to David's Psalm 51:3 that says, "For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me." Here we can see that both Hamlet and David are really good at showing themselves their wrong and where their conscience is lying at that moment. Second of all, in Act 3, Hamlet says, "For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong?" And David says, "From the wicked who do me violence, my deadly enemies who surround me." Both of them are struggling with similar problems where it feels like everyone is against them and they have to still remain true to themselves and understand what their internal life is thinking. Therefore, we can see even more that Hamlet is paralleled with King David and has integrity in the same way he does. The last trait we're going to talk about is decisiveness. Hamlet is quick to understand Claudius's sins and acknowledge his duty to seek revenge. At the very beginning, Hamlet says, "So, uncle, there you are, now to my word." Hamlet not only says this because he wants to.
The next point is wisdom. Hamlet understands the need for wisdom and complex thought if he is to achieve his goals. His goals, of course, being usurping the king and becoming king himself. He says, "Till then, sit still, my soul. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes. And enterprises of great pitch and moment, with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action." These are both speaking about patience. Patience is integral in wisdom because you have to be wise to know when to act and when to not act. Hamlet exemplifies this throughout the play because he constantly decides between action and inaction, and it shows his wisdom later in the play and his growing of his wisdom as he finally gets to that decision where he realizes it's time for him to act. Hamlet says, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." This references back to his morality and the idea that wisdom has a play in morality. You have to know what's right and wrong for you to have the moral compass of what's right and wrong. Similarly, Solomon, who's a great biblical king and constantly strove for wisdom, he said, "So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and distinguish between right and wrong." He's basically saying the same thing. He says, "Give me wisdom so that I may have morals." So more on Solomon. He was obviously this great king that God trusted so well. God gave him this wonderful gift that gave him great wisdom. An example of this gift is when two women fought over who was the mother of a child. One of the woman's children had died, and they were both claiming that the child was theirs. So Solomon acted as if he was going to cut the baby in half to see which one was telling the truth. The woman who's not the mother said it was fine if both of them took half of the baby. But the mother insisted that the baby would live, even if it was given to the other woman. Solomon then took that and realized, through his wisdom, that the woman who was the actual mother would insist on her baby living. Therefore, he gave the baby to the woman. Hamlet has a similar action. He's portrayed as wise when he decides to wait to kill the king until the time is right, and he understands the power of taking a human life, referencing back to the morals of wisdom. The next trait is clarity. Mental clarity is one of Hamlet's most prominent qualities by the end of the play. At first, it's not so seen because he seems depressed and he's constantly mourning his father, but he understands that he needs to have a clear mind if he's going to run a country. This also applies to the drunkenness that Claudius has, because Hamlet knows that he doesn't want to be like Claudius. He's constantly ashamed of what the others think about their country. About Denmark, they say, "They clep us drunkards," and with swinish phrase, and he's embarrassed that their country even is thought of like that because of the king. He also has the mental strength to fully understand the times that he was wrong, and he strives to change them. He called himself a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, and a damned defeat was made. He asked himself, "Am I a coward?" This is him growing up and showing wisdom and clarity, mental clarity, to realize that he's not the man he was before, and he's changed into something better and more kingly. A great example of mental clarity in an authority figure is Suleiman I. Suleiman was the most respected sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He reformed the legal system and ended religious persecution in his empire. That was with Jews and Christians. He couldn't have done this if he hadn't fought against his trusted advisors and gone against what they were telling him to do, which was persecute the Jews and Christians. He decided to have morals and to have mental fortitude so that he could create his vision for a safer world and that he would make the world better for others. Hamlet is having a very similar idea. He's a well-respected prince, and he strives to make his country a better place by removing the corrupt king who might want to ruin it through poor leadership. He fights against the adversity of multiple people trying to kill him, trying to trap him, trying to hurt him. His best friends turn against him, but he fights through all of that and tries to make his country a better place.
The last trait we're going to talk about is decisiveness. Now, I know what you're thinking. A common theme in Hamlet throughout the play is Hamlet's own struggle with his action versus his inaction. However, Hamlet does make decisions and stick to them at the end of the play. This also is referring to his wisdom, his integrity, and his clarity, and decisiveness is the action which he finally puts forth to do this. And as a king, you would need to encompass all of the mental and internal thoughts and feelings and put them into action in order to be a great king. And we see that Hamlet, by the end of Act 5, is doing this. So first of all, he says, "So, uncle, there you are, now to my word." Again, referring to the fact that he gave his word and he will fill it out. He understands Claudius's sins and acknowledges his duty to seek revenge. Hamlet is going to do this at all costs. Moreover, Hamlet devises a plan to immediately expose the king's wrongdoings. "If a do blench, I know my course." He understands what he is going to do and how he is going to see if Claudius is guilty and where he is going to catch him in, showing that Hamlet can make decisions, and when he makes them, they are successful. We can compare Hamlet to John III Sobieski. He was the King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. He took decisive action and came to a firm verdict, taking the Battle of Vienna. Now, when you see this picture and you hear about these qualities, we kind of refer to this as Fortinbras in Act 4, right? He is a man of action and especially of military vigor who is wanting to take over this plot of land. And so we're asking, like, how is this relating to Hamlet? But you see that Hamlet, once he sees Fortinbras and admires that quality, he says, from now on, let my thoughts be bloody or be nothing worth. Hamlet desires to have this decisive action, and once he is inspired by Fortinbras's brute action, he takes the king at all costs. Hamlet possesses this same decisiveness and revolts against his unfit uncle to the point of death. In summary, Hamlet contains integrity, wisdom, clarity, and decisiveness, and Shakespeare develops all of these qualities throughout the play. Therefore, we can attribute Hamlet, as with great kings of old, as a good king who Shakespeare admires. Thank you.